Welcome back to yet another Moonshire Monday. Thank you so much for being here. I'm seeing a lot of people in chat already. I'm seeing Dame Drop and Foulful Mark and Angry Berry. Hi Hoot, Paleris, Future 34, Krish. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate that. Oh my gosh, Allfather! What a wonderful day in Moonshire this is. Thank you so much for the donation. I just saw that still showing up for the chat above me. Thank you so much. That is an incredible donation. Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. Really appreciate the strong start. I started off with a countdown timer this time because I noticed that in all of the streams, it was a slightly bit of a delay for everyone. So some people in Europe might take a bit longer for the stream to start than someone closer to me, I think. Or it might not even be location based. It might just be some general latency. So the countdown is nice because then everyone can like see the start of the stream at the same time. We got Skibby and Napster. Hi Hoot again, our Bellcat. Thank you again so much for being here. Today on the docket, I don't really have anything in particular. I just wanted to chat and hang out and talk about some development stuff. Because in the past week, I was kind of away. I talked about last week how I wanted to do like a music bot and things like that. Oh, I guess I did work on this. I forgot that I was working on this. So in the past week, I went on a short trip to help move my sister into her new apartment. And before I left, I did some work on the tile states, which I can show that off in just a second after I get through this. Let's see. Butteriffy Sabby, or Saba, Ghastly MK. For the first time I actually made it to one of these streams. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you could be here. One thing that I'm working on is making sure that I don't stutter or slur my speech. That's something I really do a lot. What I'm working on now, or what I was working on, is these dots. So all these dots represent the tile state. It's used for navigational purposes. So like the AI enemies, they don't actually have eyeballs. They can't see the environment. They can't see where to go. So I have all of these dots in place to help guide them along so they'll know what paths are like legitimate or which is water, which is a wall. So this is really helpful with that. And you can see the tile states change. So it's kind of subtle, but the color changes from green to pink if the line of sight with the player is not there. So like this dot right here turned pink because there's a tree in the way. And you can see the pink kind of change as I walk around this tree. It's just because the line of sight with the green dots is changing. The dots not like the game. There is a performance cost of doing this, yes. So in the current Steam demo, this is in the game. This is in the game in the current Steam demo, but this version that I have here on screen is much, much more efficient. And I would love to go through how that is, because yes, there is a definite performance cost to doing this, especially when it comes to like calculating line of sight. In order to calculate line of sight, you actually need to do like a collision check in a big line, and that can be kind of costly. So I think I have it configured to do this every quarter second. So let me pull this up. I think it's not this one. I was working on another project. So let's go over to tile state. So this is the new tile states that I made. And I believe, yeah, the timer is set to 0.25 seconds. So it recalculates all of this information every quarter second. So 4 times every second, it's going to recalculate like the pink versus green. But one thing that was really imperformant, like not good, in my previous version of these dots is that I used to have it set up where every single dot in the map was performing calculations. But now I have it set up so that only the relevant ones will perform calculations. So for example, all along this stuff, you see that there's red dots everywhere, and these red dots represent a wall. It represents out of bounds, someplace that you can't actually get to. And it's really important to distinguish what's out of bounds and what's in bounds, because we only want to be running calculations for stuff that's in bounds. If I was performing calculations on all of these red dots, that would be a complete waste, because there is no situation where any character needs to go into any of these red dots. And on top of that, I do some like pre-calculation. So before the map even loads, it figures out what dots are supposed to be red, which ones are supposed to be blue, and it uses that data to help like streamline the performance. Rather than every dot starting from scratch every single frame and recalculating all of this stuff, it really does a good job of caching this information and making sure it's just not wasting too much performance, because if all of these dots were doing like crazy collision checks, it could definitely lag the game, especially if I was doing it every single frame. In this case, I'm only doing it every quarter frame, or sorry, every quarter second. So we'll use less data. It's more about processing power. The data space that gets taken up isn't that big of a deal. A game like this really doesn't take up very much space at all in memory, so you can use up as much memory as you really would want to, as long as you're not like stack overflowing, of course. So I wouldn't say space is too much of a concern as much as performance, because I don't want the game to lag. It takes a lot of memory usage before things start lagging, but it doesn't take very much processing before things start lagging. So that's why I'm kind of prioritizing that sort of stuff, if that makes sense. Does this apply with 3D games too? Yeah, definitely. Although I can't say specifically, because I'm not a 3D developer, I haven't ever made a 3D game, I don't think it would be any different, because it's still running off of the same sort of thing. It's running every frame, recalculating stuff, and you're just choosing what needs to be recalculated. If a 3D game is recalculating its own version of these dots, except maybe there's more dots. Maybe there's dots for the Z-axis as well. So take all of these dots and multiply it by the height of the map as well. Oh wow, it's Moonshire Monday? Hi, thank you, Alexis Hart. Thank you for stopping in. What is some method you use to optimize the game size and FPS? Well, so to optimize the FPS, I just need to be very considerate of things like I was just talking about with the dots, where I need to make sure that if I'm running calculations on something, it needs to be really necessary. It's really easy to put a bunch of code into the game that's always running, it's always calculating stuff, because that's safe. If it's always running, then you know it's always going to be there when you need it. But the flip side of that is that if you have too much stuff running every frame, then it's gonna start to chug a little bit, especially on slower machines. How do you go about making a color palette? So I didn't really... I'll show you exactly what I did. So there's this website called Lowspec, L-O-S-P-E-C. So I'll pull up this site. It's called Lowspec. And when I was looking at color palettes for my game, trying to figure out like a direction for the art style and stuff, I went to this site, and this site is really cool just because it has a bunch of sample color palettes that you can look at, and it has a bunch of examples. There's really, really a lot to choose from, and I think that these are good starting points. Now, the one that I ended up going with, it was called Luap. Yeah, this one. So this is the one I ended up choosing, but you might notice that these colors are less saturated than the ones that I use. The colors in my game are a bit brighter and a bit more saturated, and if I pull up my color palette, this is my color palette. It is just Lua P40. It's just this low spec, whatever it was. But I boosted the saturation. I might have boosted the brightness a little bit too. But my whole point with talking about this is that even if you find a color palette that you like, there's nothing wrong with like going your own way and finding your own colors. Because even also on top of that, I don't stick to only these colors. Like, this is just some of them. Whenever I'm making a sprite, I normally start with these. Oh, sorry, the music got loud. Yeah, it is loud. Hello. Oh my gosh. I'm not happy about that at all. Hello. Uh-oh, my phone's playing the stream. Oh my gosh. Wow. I am so sorry that the stream completely died there. What a momentum killer. That is such a bummer. We had 100 people watching, and then suddenly the stream just dies? What's up with that? I'm so sorry. That is embarrassing, and I'm a little frustrated by that. It's okay. Thank you. I'm appreciative of that. Thank you for sticking around, the people who are still here. Allfather, High Hoot, Saba, Nick, Krish, Butteriffy. Thank you so much for sticking around while... Uh-oh. It's still not great. Yeah, I still see the number of frames kind of dropping a little bit. Maybe I can call my service provider and talk about different options. I might be able to get a different router entirely, because I have had this for a few years. Maybe a new router would make it better, because this is not acceptable at all for me. I hate this. I hate when streams lag, especially my own, because I don't really like it when there's a big delay or a bunch of dropped frames. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating for everyone. Yeah, I'm so sorry that it's stuttering. Maybe they're coming back. Yeah, I think so. That typically happens. I think people are understanding that when things just freeze up, it's just for a moment. How is the skeleton right now? Let's see. If you're talking about the skeleton from the game, let me pull that up. I forgot that I was working on that. Do I have that in mobs? No, I have that in enemies. Oh yeah, this guy. Yeah, he's cute. I like him. Let's see. How did I make a pathfinding system for my enemies? Yeah, so I was talking about that at the beginning of the stream, where I have all of these dots, and this is exactly how the pathfinding works, is that whenever an enemy is trying to, say, chase the player, let's say that the enemy... Whoop. Let me put this in place. It'll be a better way for me to demonstrate this if I can place a pin down. Yeah, what the heck? So I'm going to make it so that I can place a pin down wherever the player is. I'm going to demonstrate what this is talking about. Well, I guess it makes more sense if I go over here then. This still isn't a very good demonstration area. Let's go to town. Okay. Yeah, this is a better spot. So let's say that an enemy was over here, was where the mouse is. Whoops. Oh my gosh, that's scary. Don't look at that. Oh my gosh, this is a pain in the butt. So to explain how this works, the color of the dots matters. You can see that there's green dots and there are pink dots. If a dot is green, then that means that that dot has line of sight with the player. It means that the dot has nothing separating it with the player. But when the dot is pink, that means that there's something in the way. So when I walk behind this ledge over here, you can see a lot of the dots turn pink because there's a wall in the way. These dots can't see the player anymore because he's standing behind this wall. But as soon as I like walk up and out, they turn green again because he's in the line of sight. And this is how enemy navigation works, is that since all these tile states have information on the player, let's say that the player is standing here and the enemy is down here where the mouse is. The enemy could see that this dot up here has line of sight with the player. It can see that this dot can see the player. But even though the enemy is all the way down here and it can't see the player, it knows that this dot can, and so it's going to navigate to this dot. It's going to see all of these dots with green in them, and it's going to move to the closest one that also has line of sight with the enemy. Am I using any custom-built ECS? No, not really. I mean, well, I mean, I guess everything is custom-built. I'm not really using a specific entity component system. I'm just using a system for enemies that everything has its own state and its own details and stuff. I wouldn't say it matches the paradigm of an entity component system. But that's complex. Yeah, I would say pathfinding in general is kind of complex because, like, when I spawn an enemy, let's get rid of this and let's spawn a mob. I'll spawn a slime. So there's a slime. And these slimes are pretty basic right now. Or, like, the slime's logic is just to move towards the player, right? So that it's just walking towards the player. It's not really considering anything else. Oh! I forgot that I messed this up. I just crashed the game. Mob navigation 29. Let's see what happened there. Tile states viable, pursue tile index list. Oh yeah, I got rid of how this works. Since I changed the tile states, I also need to change how the enemies interact with it, so that's probably not going to work. I don't think I can show it in progress right now. But what I was talking about with that specific enemy is that they have a very simple movement logic. See, like, they just move towards the player, and if there's an obstacle or a wall between the player and the enemy, then that's when it does that process of, like, finding line of sight tile states and stuff. It doesn't do that unless it's completely necessary. You missed 2 Moonshire Mondays in a row last week? I mean, thankfully the VODs are there. Do you think you spent too much time polishing the game? I suppose yes, but also in that time that I was polishing, I was also... Why do the vines flicker? Oh, I'll talk about that in a second. With the game, like, during this time polishing, I've been changing all kinds of stuff. I wouldn't say all this time is just spent on polishing, but yes, polishing the game is not an important step until you're at the end of development. A breadcrumb system based on where the player last was. That is definitely a good option too. The reason why, let's see. I'll have to think about that. That could be. I think that a combination. Excuse me. If you can't tell, I'm a little sick. I have a head cold. My nose is stuffy. Thank you for telling me to hydrate. How do you make all my picture art look like the same style? I mean, that's the trick, is that I utilize a lot of other people's artwork. I commission people. I pay them for their work. I pay open source, or not open source. I pay asset pack creators for their work, and I use open source assets. And all of those assets do not match my style at all, like, or maybe a little bit, but things need to be adjusted. So in order for my pixel art to, like, be cohesive, it does take a lot of work from me. I edit every single sprite so that it kind of matches my style, like with the player. As long as everything kind of matches the player needs to be able to stand next to anything, and it has to look good. And like there's some rules to that, like the strong black outlines, like all the objects that you can interact with have strong black outlines, like the tree or the player or the walls. But anything that you can just like walk through or walk past, like the water or the little blades of grass or the flowers, those don't have outlines, and that sort of design language is really helpful with communication with players. Since the game doesn't, like, I don't want to have to specifically tell people what is or isn't tangible, it should be obvious. Do I cache any parts of the pathfinding to improve performance? Yes, kind of. So that's what I was kind of talking about with these tile states, is that it's very important to get the performance considerations out of the way really quickly, because the old version of these tile states, every single tile was running its calculation every frame. And that's problematic because a lot of these tiles do not need to run every frame. Like all of these red dots, I specifically made them red because you can't go into this area. This is like out of bounds area. And it would not make any sense at all for all of these to be like running calculations every frame, because the result's always going to be the same. The result is always going to be red. Do not go into this area. Whereas now I have it set up where when the map loads into memory, which it actually loads into memory before the map becomes even visible. So when the map loads into memory, it does a check to see where are all the walls at, where's all the water at, and then from there it's able to figure out, oh, well, I don't need to run calculations at all on any of these because they are not in bounds. I only need to worry about the inbound stuff. Additionally, it's not running this calculation every frame, it's every 0.25 seconds, so 4 times per second. The water wants to be drank. Thank you, appreciate that. Do I know how many people wishlisted Moonshire? Yes, I do. But I'm not able to share, or I am able. I don't want to share that right now. I'm keeping that a secret. Do I like chess? I do like chess. I wouldn't say I'm good at it, but whenever I play chess, I always enjoy it. I'm going to go ahead and warn everyone that I'm probably going to end after 1 hour, so in a half hour from now, just because I'm not feeling good. My nose is stuffy, and My throat's upset, so, or it's scratchy, you know. So we'll take it easy today. I'm my first ever game jam in a week. Any tips? Awesome. Well, my advice for a game jam is to use some pre-made assets to help streamline that process. And what that means is that when you come up with your game idea for your game jam, and again, keep it simple. You have to make it really, really simple. And when you come up with that idea, I would not start by drawing a bunch of assets. I would start by either downloading an open source asset pack that you can get things started with, or just like doing placeholder art. What I'm getting at is wait on art until the end. Or do it concurrently if you have multiple people working. But a game that has bad artwork is still a game that you can turn in. But a game that's only artwork and not really a functional game, you might not be able to turn that in for submission. So I'd say focus on making a game functional to the point where you could turn it in, and then from there work on making the assets better, making new ones, making all the things more polished and all that stuff that you need to do in order for the game to like feel actually good. Hope I feel better soon. Thank you. Appreciate that. Can you make a live where you make something from scratch? Yeah, I think that would be a really cool idea. Someone talked about, since my suggestion is always to make Pong or make Space Invaders, I think it would be really fun to have a stream where I just make one of those games from scratch, because I think that'd be really cool. Would I recommend using a game engine? So there's game engines and there's game frameworks. Right now I'm using a game framework. It's called Love2D. And what that means is that it's like a code library. All of the game engine stuff is just code functions that you call. Whereas a game engine like Unity or Game Maker, it's like an all-inclusive game-making program, and you make the game in the program. It's very intuitive and approachable. So I think engines are generally easier for newcomers. But speaking personally, I like working with a framework a little bit more, just because I have a bit more control. I like recommending Game Maker to newcomers specifically. That's what I started with when I was a kid. When I was a young kid, I got Game Maker, I think it was Game Maker 7. Last stream I said 2008, but I think it was even earlier than that. I think it was 2006 when I got Game Maker 7. And Game Maker 7 was I loved it. I used it all the time, and I used it for years before switching over to Love2D. I use Godot now. Nice. I've heard only good things about Godot, and I think that after I'm done with Moonshire and I start to experiment with 3D games, Godot is at the top of the list for things I'm considering. I'm really jumping between trying out, well, I'll probably try both because it's free. I'll try out Unreal Engine and Godot. I think that those are the top two for me, just because Unreal Engine makes such good visuals, and Godot has like its open sourceness, and I wouldn't have as much to worry about with that. It's free. I struggle to use engines compared to frameworks. Well, yeah, if frameworks make sense to you, then I'd say stick with that. Nothing wrong with that. If a game like Stardew Valley, which was made within a framework, can be successful, then you can make a successful game too. I'm really only proficient in C++, so after doing some research, I found. Well, so Unreal Engine uses C++, so that might be a decent option, but what you should understand is that if you know C++, it's going to be very easy for you to learn any language at all, because C++ is one of the harder ones. You have to worry about references and pointers and strong typing and really convoluted polymorphism that you don't really have to worry about with other languages. So I think that I would say I wouldn't try to pigeonhole yourself into just C++ stuff. I would say you're a C++ person, and therefore it's going to be very easy for you to learn C# or Java or whatever else you want to learn. C# would be a pretty easy one just because there's a lot of game frameworks that use it, but I use Lua, and that's again easier than some other languages, and I'm a big fan of Lua. Oh, that looks weird. That's messed up. Godot's node system was a bit confusing for me, but I want to try Godot again. Yeah, I think, well, there's going to be a learning curve with any sort. Whoa, that looks weird. There's going to be, whoa, geez, there's so many bugs going on. When's my game coming out? I don't know, I'm sorry. I know that I've been pretty bad about giving concrete timelines just because I keep changing directions and things aren't quite clear on when it's going to come out, but I will say I'm making amazing progress with the game. It really is coming along nicely. And thank you all for the patience. I know that it's kind of frustrating watching me work on this game without being able to play it, and it's been so long since the last update, but I promise that things are coming along nicely. Oh, we were going to talk about the vines. So Allfather earlier pointed out that these vines over here are flickering. You can kind of see it if you look really closely at some of these vines. They're flickering. I don't actually know why they're doing that. If I make another game after Moonshire, will I make a devlog? That looked really messed up. I think it got looped. I'll definitely make videos on whatever I work on. But it's going to be... From here on out, I think things are going to be a little bit different with the devlogs, where the format isn't going to be quite as rehearsed. Because before, everything was so scripted and edited, and it feels too unnatural to me, and it feels too, well, I know for a fact it's too difficult. It takes a very long time to make those devlogs because they're like highly scripted and highly edited and meticulous, which is good because it turns out to be really good videos, but I don't really enjoy that process. I enjoy working on the games. I don't really enjoy making videos about working on the games. So I think that my devlogs are going to be more like based off of the stream or showing them more naturally or unscripted. That's kind of the vibe I think I'm going to go for. When I resize the window, I also need to resize the fonts. Yeah, you do have to do that. It breaks the game after some minute. Oh, yeah, do not ever call new font in the draw function. So this is why it breaks the game. I'm glad that you asked that question. Okay. So, put your new font whenever you call new image or new font. Whenever you call this function, it is a performance cost every time you call this function. Because what this is doing is it's going to this file, it's grabbing this file, and it's loading it into memory. Whenever you load a file into memory, it takes time. Now, it might only take like 0.1 seconds, but that's still time. And that's why when the game starts up, it goes through all these fonts and loads them into memory. Same with all these sprites up here. And it takes a long time to do that. Or well, I say a long time, it takes like a few seconds to do that. Now, what that person pointed out just a second ago is that when you call this function in a loop, in this case, you called it in the draw function, that means that this is being called every single frame. And like I said, it is a... it might slow your game down if you're calling it at all, but if you're calling it every frame, that means every single frame is going to be slower. So the answer to your question is you can't put this in the draw function. Instead, whenever the window resizes, that's when you should call this. So I think I have a function for this. Set window size. Or actually, I think there's a resize thing here. Yeah, this is what you're looking for. So, whoever asked that question, instead of putting that call in the draw function, you're going to want to put it into this function love.resize. You can put this directly into your main.lua, and you would just put in that new font thing that you had. Just put it right in here. So this function gets called whenever the window changes size. And like you were saying, whenever the window changes size, that's when you need to resize the fonts. So you could just put it right in here. It's not going to call every frame. It's only going to call on frames when the size of the window is different than the previous frame. Was there anything in Lua that confused you at first as a beginner? Oh, tables and the way that the tables and their functions and how like you can use strings as the index for a table. Once I figured that out, Lua makes so much sense to me. Wolf said, is it because of the dots on the ground? I remember an old bug where the vines would flicker if you took damage. Could be something. Oh! Whoa, I wonder. Whoops. Let me see. Allfather, another donation. What's for lunch today? I'm gonna go back to McDonald's again. Thank you so much for the donation, Allfather, again. I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, it's like a habit of mine where after stream I go get McDonald's. So that's that. Like today, like Monday's my McDonald's day. It's Moonshire McDonald's Monday, actually. Thank you again, appreciate that. I really want to play the game. Is there a release date? I don't have a release date, unfortunately, but there is a demo available. I was going to check out those vines, so I have this thing called it's called Field. And then Blockade. Vine? I'm trying to see where I draw those vines. Because if I had to guess... it's just a problem with the effect. Here, vine. Spike vine. Spike vine blockade. I'm surprised that it would have a problem here. Maybe these draw... sorry, it's taking me a second. I'm looking for the place where those vines actually get drawn. And those vines get drawn from a very, very old function. It gets drawn from here. And I bet that I wrote this function 3 years ago. That's not an exaggeration, because this is the same function that exists in the Legend of Lua codebase, effects draw. And I think what's happening is that it's not setting... Oh, no, it would be setting white. I don't know, actually. That's kind of weird. Because there's no E draw. I think it's coming here. Maybe I can... It's the same code as when it was implemented? Yeah, probably. Well, I mean, it's going to be even older than that. What I mean is that this function here, effects draw, is for all one-off effects. So this is the same function that's used for drawing, like the petals that float down, or the raindrops, I think. It gets drawn through this function. And the spike vines on the ground also gets drawn through this function. But, I mean, I can try... Here, I'll try a set white. Set white. Because maybe that's why it's doing it. No, it's still doing it. I don't know, man. That's really confusing. I don't know why it's, like, flickering like that. Is the shadow... Yeah, the shadow's flickering, too. It's the whole sprite. I'm not sure why it is. This is kind of confusing. If you need to use the same font but with different sizes, do I need to put every font size in a variable to avoid a new font? No. This is what I'm saying, is that you can change... You can reload the font, but don't do it every frame. Don't do it in love.draw. Love.draw runs every single frame, and when you call new font, it causes a performance slowdown. And it's okay to do a performance slowdown occasionally, but you should not do it every frame. I'm saying don't put that new font call in love.draw, put it into this function here instead. Go into main.lua, add this function love.resize, and what this function does is it gets called whenever your game window changes size, and that's exactly what you want. Whenever the game window resizes, that's when you want to reload your fonts. You don't want to reload them every frame, and you don't need to load in every different size when the game loads. That's not necessary either. Wow, all the mods are here. Thank you so much for joining, Pippa and Modley. Appreciate that. What advice would you give to a complete beginner about programming if you were to? I would say just to take it one step at a time. You don't need to learn programming in order to make games. If your goal is to make games, I would say start by making games. And because you can make games without coding, you can download Game Maker or Scratch and make some simple stuff. But also, coding is not as hard as you might think it is. I have a video on my channel called Learn to Code with Lua. And I think it's a really good introduction because you don't have to download anything. You can do everything in your browser and just code along with the video and see what it's like. That's what I would say. If you're interested in coding, I would say watch that Learn to Code with Lua video. Because it does a really good job of just like baby stepping you into what it's like, and then by the end I think you'll have at least a grasp of what it is that you're even looking at here. Because all these, like, when you look at this code here, it might look completely overwhelming because it just looks like gobbledygook and you don't even know what it's saying. But when you take it one step at a time, function, there's a section in the video that talks about what a function is, and then this is the name of the function, these are the parameters, I talk about that in the video too. So it's like you can go through each of these things one at a time until eventually you can just read this naturally like it was a foreign language. Because that's kind of what it is. It's the same as if you were learning Spanish, you would take it one word at a time. And like, it's not productive to read Spanish one word at a time. But after you speak Spanish for years, or you're really good at reading it, you can just like read it and comprehend it without needing to translate it in your head. And it's the same with coding. You just have to do it a lot. Adele, hi, welcome in. I'm trying to make a platformer, but the, let's see, work for the camera. Do I know why? Oh, but the lookat won't work for the camera. So you're saying that when you call cam::lookat, it's not going to this position? Are you sure that it's being reached? So are you calling this every frame? Because one thing that you need to consider is that this lookat function happens once when you call it. When you call cam.lookat, it happens one time, the camera will move to that position, and then it will stop at that position, and it'll stay there until you call cam::lookat again. So that's why you need to put cam::lookat into an update function and say cam::lookat every frame it's going to look at the player's like position. You put it in love.update. In that case, make sure that the position that you're passing into it is like unique to the position that you're trying to look at. Also, make sure that in main.lua you are drawing the camera. Let's see, where is it? You need to attach the camera and you need to detach the camera. So make sure you're calling this attach, then draw the stuff, and then detach it too. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I'm going to make a simple platformer too, but I will avoid the tutorials at all costs. I set that challenge for yourself. Awesome, that's good. Yeah, I mean, a platformer is a really good game to make, but it is still kind of challenging to do. If you're brand new to development, I would still say that's a bit complicated, but if you have made at least a simple project or once or twice before, I think a platformer is a great one to go for. What's challenging about a platformer is you have to worry about things like gravity calculations and complex collisions that conflict with the gravity calculations. You need to check if you're grounded. You need to check for there's just a lot of stuff that goes into making a platformer that really isn't very simple, because it's not like you just drag a character onto the screen and then suddenly it works. There's a lot that goes into making the calculations for physics and gravity work. Another donation, thank you so much for X Dukinja. I made an MP game in Left2D, please check it. Awesome, that's very, very cool. Yeah, check it out for anyone who's interested. Making first project in GameMaker to spend this week learning how to have an enemy NPC follow movement patterns in a scrolling racer and dodge hazards, steal items from the player. That sounds really, really cool, but it also does sound pretty challenging. Let me know how that goes. All those features sound really cool, but I could see them. I could think of a few problems like that might arise with implementing that. I'm eager to hear how it goes. Let me know. That sounds cool. Also, like, I love hearing about people using GameMaker because I use GameMaker a ton, but I haven't used it for a long time. Like, I use it a lot when I was, like, starting out, but I still love it. I still think it's an awesome engine, and I love recommending it to people. I'm glad people are still using it, and I'm glad people are talking about it. Do I ever pre-plan the structure of my code, like directories, parent classes? Yeah, I pre-plan everything. Or rather, like, what I've been doing lately is rewriting. So I do this a lot where I have something like, here, this is a good example. I have cutscene and I have cutscene 2. So when I first implemented this cutscene file, I kind of just did it on the spot. I did what I thought I needed in order to get it working, and it did work. Everything works fine. And the result is this 388 line file. Now, the problem that I noticed is that when I continued to work on this as the game progressed, there was just a bit too much one-off sections. Like, this. This is like a reprogrammed specific case called slow pan, or this one, follow player, or this one, quick look. All of this stuff is like pre-programmed behavior. And that's not exactly what I want. Man, my nose is really killing me right now. Yeah, I'm gonna be done in like 5 more minutes. I'm sorry about that. But what my point is that this code here is just too complex and not necessary. So my goal was I wanted to think ahead to how can I make this file more efficient, because this is 388 lines long. Maybe I can tone it down. And that's why I went over and made this cutscene 2 file. It's basically like my next iteration on it. I saw all the stuff I did in cutscene 1, and I'm thinking, okay, I can improve it by cutting out all of this stuff and making it very simple. And I was able to trim it down to 132 lines. That's so good. I basically cut it down into 1/3 of what it was before. Very, very cool I was able to do that. It's the same functionality as before, except now instead of pre-programming all of that behavior into the cutscene file specifically, instead, every case that requires a cutscene has the option to pass in a scene. So let me see, scene. This is what a scene looks like. So this is the entire cutscene compacted into like a scene object. Essentially what I did is I replaced all of this code right here. Look at this. I replaced all of this code with this. It's just a very concise and readable, simple like set of actions. Like wait 8.8 seconds, do it smoothly and slowly. Wait 1.5 seconds, go back to the player, and halt. This one's only 3 lines too. So it's a really convenient way to just pass in these objects into the cutscene file, and then it processes that object to make things work. When you load your map, half of it isn't loading. Half of it's not loading. That makes it sound like you are not rendering all of the layers. So in your draw function, I imagine you're going through each layer and drawing each layer one by one. So I think that some of the layers that your tiles are on aren't being drawn. I would double check that file and make sure that every layer that you want to be visible is being drawn in your draw function. I'm ignoring someone. I'm not ignoring you. How do I find people for commissions? That's a good question. I find a lot of people on Discord because people reach out to me on Discord a lot. But also, I originally found Ellie on Twitter, I think. And someone who's working on illustrations for me right now is a personal friend that I knew in high school. Freelancing website. I mean, yeah, that's an option too. I think that I commissioned someone from Fiverr before. But I think in general, I meet people through Discord a lot. I think that Discord communities are a pretty good way to get one-on-one interactions, but there's lots of options. I think Twitter's good because then you can see what their artwork looks like right away, and you can tell right away if they're even someone that you would want to work with based on their style. No, I made a variable for the Lua file and did GameMap pull and draw, but for some reason half of it's gone. I'm not sure what you mean. So I don't think I do GameMap pull and draw. I do... in my draw function, yeah, I don't use GameMap:draw anywhere in my game. So maybe that's part of it. Instead, what I do is I consider all of the layers that exist in my map. So I have a background layer, I have a base layer, I have terrain, I have something called deep and shadow. So these are all the different layers that my tiles exist on in the map. And it actually goes through and draws each layer individually. There are lots of stuff in the tiled map that I don't want to be visible in Love 2D, so that's why I do it individually like this. You're not spamming, it's okay. I'd be happy if you check my game. It's my first game. I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to check. I'm not gonna check it out on stream, but you can post on Discord, and we can check it out. About being sociable, yeah. I mean, that is always the hard part, right? Yeah, it is really hard to meet people. I think Twitter or Reddit are good options just because people post their work there already. People are really interested in getting engagement on Twitter. Oh, you know, I commissioned an artist for my bird game as well. Someone made the termite assets, and they look really good. They look better than something that I could have made myself. Why not make this into a list with a for loop? Seems much simpler. Make this into a list. Yeah, that would be better. You're right. That would be better. What would be better is if I had local draw layers equals, and then I would put in each individual one like this, background, and then I bet AI is gonna finish this. Yeah, it did. It was able to, so it read ahead all the layers that I want to draw. And there it is. So there we go. Okay, that was a good suggestion. So I did what you did, what you suggested. I added a new local variable called draw layers, or I'll call it all layers. There we go. And I put it as a string. Every layer that I want to draw. I have background, simple, base, base 2, terrain, and so on. And it goes in order, by the way. That's important. It goes in order that it gets drawn. And here it's going to go through I pairs, which is the I number index value. And it's going to draw that particular layer. It's going to check, does the game map have a simple layer? And if it does, it's going to draw the simple layer. Again, because since layer represents this value here, background, GameMap.layers background, draw layers, layers background. This is a much more efficient way. I just reduced the number of lines in this file by like 30 or whatever it was, which is really nice. The mirages, though, they need to stay custom because there's some logic that goes into drawing these. What programming language do I recommend for learning after Python? The language that I always recommend using is whichever language gets you closer to your goals. If your goal is to make a game, then your first step is to kind of choose a game engine that you want to work with, and then the language comes from that. Like, I didn't choose to code in Lua. I chose to make games in Love2D, and Love2D uses Lua, and so I use Lua. It just so happens I also like Lua. That's nice. But I wouldn't say that the language is what I care about, because like if all of this was a Python game instead, that would be fine. It wouldn't be that much different, really. I don't think that the language choice is that big of a deal. Why don't I do 3D? I don't do 3D just because I'm making a 2D game right now. I want to do 3D after I'm done with this game, but yeah, right now I'm just doing 2D just because that's what I'm used to, and that's what I want to finish up. I just saw Unity C# is very similar to Java, so I went with it. Yeah, C# is basically Java 2.0. Really, the history behind it actually is that Microsoft saw Java, they saw how successful it was, and they're like, oh, well, we could do something better, because Java has a lot of annoying aspects to it, slight tedious parts, and Microsoft just cleaned that up. And C# is just a slightly more clean version of Java. But there's people that still swear by Java, and I get that. I don't mind Java, but after using C#, I like C# a lot more. You wouldn't recommend doing a game in Python because it's really slow? That makes sense. It's probably better for like scripts or one-off things. Yeah, I could believe that the loop's slower, but I don't know anything about that. I do know that you can make a game in Python, so I wouldn't say that you should just completely discount it. But yeah, if it turns out that there's performance concerns, then it might be better to move on to something different. I'd have to do more research. I got the need to use love.resize, but now I am saying if I have the same font, but with different sizes, like a title and description with a small size, do I have to use two variables to store fonts? My bad. I'm sorry for misunderstanding that. The answer to that is yes. For me, because yeah, if you have one font displaying one size above this and then another one is smaller, you would need to have two different fonts loaded into memory. As far as I know, I don't think there's a way to change the size on the fly. A Pygame isn't slow at all as long as you structure your code and handle your data well. I believe that too. That's kind of the impression that I got as well, is that people do make games with Python, so I'm sure that there are good ways to do it. I just don't know it personally, and if someone told me that the loop is slow, then like I'd have to look into that. But I've heard mixed opinions. I hear a lot of people do use Python for games, so that makes me think that it is perfectly fine to use. XIV, yay, kind of stream. I'm glad you could be here. I don't know how much longer I'm gonna go. I'm feeling okay right now, but man, my nose and my throat is feeling really yucky, so I don't think I'm gonna last much longer. But we'll stick around and chat. Right now I'm just chatting with everyone and answering questions. Please check Discord. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of a stream right now. Language choice does matter a tiny bit. Most languages are fine, but my experience using Pygame will need to optimize literally everything. Are so performance intense. So Noober, that's good insight. What I have to ask though is, do you have anything to compare it to? Python compared to Love2D and Lua, for example. Are you saying that the language Python caused the game to be slow, whereas if you made it using Lua, it would be faster? Because if that's the case, I'm just curious why that is. Or are you saying Pygame results in a slower loop compared to when you're using GDAU, because GDAU handles a lot of the performance aspects for you. You don't have to worry about a lot of different aspects like that. When you think we'll get a demo? There is actually a demo on Steam right now, but it's outdated. You could try it though. What are the pros of Love2D over other engines? I like Love2D just because it's pretty quick and easy to work with. My problem with like Monogame, for example, is that there's a lot of boilerplate, big bloated code stuff that goes into the project, whereas with Love2D, it's just main.lua. You have a main.lua and that's it. You suddenly have a Love2D project. A game engine is kind of a lot of files that go along with it. It can be intensive. And I just like how lightweight and simple Love2D is. Even though it's a framework, I still think it's lightweight compared to other frameworks. I really like it. You're making Space Invaders, but I don't know how to look if the bullet hits a monster. I would recommend doing a distance check. That's a really easy way to check things, to check collision early on. So what that means is just assume that the collisions are circles and base it off of that way. Let me draw a little picture real quick to demonstrate this. So let's say that we're in space and we have our invaders coming in. I'll make the invaders green. Uh-oh. Okay, that's one invader. And that's another invader, okay? And then our ship is gonna be down here. And he's shooting bullets. Now, what the person was asking is, how can I know if a bullet has collided with an enemy? And my answer to that is to assume that the hitbox for all of these things is a circle, because a circle is the easiest way to calculate this stuff. So let's say that the hitbox for the bullet looks like this. Oh man, my nose is so stuffy. And then the hitbox for this guy is like this. Just pretend it's a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. What the heck? And there you go. So then with that in mind, the hitboxes are circles. You don't need any physics library for this, by the way. You don't need any collision library. This is very easy. All you need... I think I'm going to end stream soon. All you need is a position for every enemy, a position for every bullet, and the radius of each one. Then, the question is, how can I check to see if this circle is overlapping with this circle? How can I tell if a circle intersects another circle? How can I tell that this circle intersects with this circle? The way you can tell that there's an intersection is if you take a look at the center point of each of them, and then you calculate the distance between both of them. Okay? So let's say the distance from this yellow dot to this yellow dot, the whole point is you check that the radius of this circle plus the radius of the smaller circle, if the distance is less than the two rads combined, so like, I'm not explaining this super well. Radius 1 plus radius 2 is less than the total distance between the circles. McDonald's Monday. Oh, Father, thank you so much again for the another donation. Thank you so much. You were so kind. Yeah, on that note, I am going to be ending stream a little bit early today just because I am so congested and I think I need to stop talking for now. But thank you so much for joining me for another Moonshire Monday. I hope that this kind of helped with answering this question. The idea is that if you calculate the distance between these 2 points, and that distance is less than the sum of the 2 radii, then that's how you know that there's a collision. And you can do that with the bullets and the enemy. Just check the distances between them, and if the distance between them is close enough, like you can make it even simpler. Just say, if the distance between the bullet and the enemy is less than 10, just try that. If it's less than 10, then count that as a collision. And then adjust that size a little bit until it feels like it hits naturally. Tigris, thank you so much for the donation. Take a drink too? Oh, I totally will. I need to drink more water. Sebastian Simon, the Aquata Ambiance. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. I really love that soundtrack. Do I use grid spatial partitioning for optimization? No, I don't do anything like that. Unless Box 2D does that under the hood, I don't worry about something like that. That sounds a little bit complicated. The only thing I don't really like about MG is the content pipeline. I don't like that either. Yeah, the overhead, boilerplate, annoying code, and the specific stuff. Like, Love 2D is a lot more streamlined and simple. You can just load the images directly. You can load the fonts and assets directly into the game. You don't need to worry about a pipeline. Okay, on that note, I'm done. I'm going to call it quits because I need to let my voice rest, and I'm going to drink lots of fluids, and I'm going to get my Mickey D's. Thank you so much for being here, and I will be back again next week for yet another Moonshire Monday. Bye, everyone. Thank you again. Bye.